dialed has been changed. The new number is...
Hello, love bugs, and welcome back to the podcast, Dear Ex, One Last Thing, for all the things we couldn't say until now. If you are here listening in the US, then today is Thanksgiving. I hope each and every one of you are surrounded by love and care today, and you eat tons of amazing food and feel absolutely no guilt about it. I hope this Thanksgiving is replenishing for your body, mind, and soul. For me, this Thanksgiving is a bit melancholy. If you've been listening for a while, then you'll know that today is the day that my grandpa passed, exactly 1 year ago, last Thanksgiving. So this is my first Thanksgiving that I'll be spending without him. Time has flown by, honestly, and it's been a bit of a blur. Some days are definitely easier than other days. Some days I feel really weak and almost dumb for mourning, as crazy as that may sound, because he was my grandparent, and everyone loses their grandparents. Like, I'm not special for losing a grandparent, therefore I feel like I can't talk about it or mourn openly about it, which I know is wrong, and I've come to learn it's not about being special that gives you the validity of being able to mourn. It's about the connection you had with somebody, and it's about your own journey. Mourning is such a unique thing. So I've definitely been easier on myself lately, especially around this time, as I, of course, think about him so much more. And Thanksgiving is such a time of gathering, his absence seems so much more noticeable. I've learned that it's okay to miss him, and it's a bit funny and sad that I had to reassure myself that it's okay to miss him, and it's okay to still be sad and still cry about it. Like, that's okay. That's what death does to us sometimes, and that is completely normal, no matter who the person was or no matter how many people lose someone of similar status in their life, I guess. But of course, today's episode has to be dedicated to my grandpa, and it's also dedicated to anyone that has recently lost a loved one, or anyone that has lost a loved one around a holiday, or really anyone that's lost anyone that's listening to this. This podcast was originally inspired by an ex-romantic relationship, but I realized it could become so much more when I wrote that letter to the ex-versions of myself. I want this podcast to serve anyone that has something to get off their chest to someone from their past, whether that is an ex-relationship, an ex-partner, or ex-best friend, or if that looks a little different, maybe it's to an ex-abuser, maybe it is to someone that's passed away. Closure isn't something we could wait for. Closure is something we build for ourselves, something we find in ourselves. And I'd be absolutely honored if this podcast could be a part of that. So, like any other episode, let's start off with some background. This was my grandfather on my paternal side. Him and my grandmother would have hit their 55th anniversary this month. They met in their 20s when he was stationed in Germany. They met out dancing, and after only knowing each other for a short amount of time, my grandmother at 21 moved from Germany to America because she had fell in love with a soldier and wanted to start a life with him. They had 3 kids. My dad is the middle child. My grandpa was absolutely the coolest man I've ever met. He used to let me play barber when I was a kid, and he would actually let me cut his hair. He had this amazing hair his whole life. By the time I came in the picture, he was like fully salt and pepper, and he had like this perfect, absolutely perfect, like just money piece just framing his face. His hair was amazing. He almost always had a smile on his face. He was kind to everyone, and no matter where he went, he would strike up a conversation with somebody. He worked hard, he played harder, and no one is perfect, but he was pretty dang close. I wrote this next piece for his funeral, and I had people that I had never met coming up and telling me that I captured who he was as a person pretty perfectly. So I'm going to share it with you all in hopes that it'll help you get to know him better. My grandpa was a pretty rare individual in some ways. I think of him as the personification of sunshine. Growing up, I didn't understand how rare he was, how unique his lessons were. From a young age, he enforced kindness, creativity, and honesty. He always taught me to celebrate being a good person and helping others more than getting recognition or fame. He complimented my soul more than he ever complimented my looks. I always say I learned the most important lessons from him. How to laugh through the pain, that even in your worst moments, you could still be compassionate. How to pick a good sourdough bread from the farmer's market. How to dance like no one's watching, even if you do it offbeat, which he often did. He taught me how to see the beauty around us at all times. The birds, the sunset, the trees, the ocean. Never, ever grow used to those things. He taught me strangers are just friends we haven't gotten to know yet. And most importantly, he taught me the power of unconditional love and the power of family. I see my grandpa in everything. Everything I look at has a piece of him. And I can't help but smile when I see the Lakers win, or hear Al Green or Sam Cooke or Otis Redding. I think of him immediately when I see the funnies or hear a good dad joke, because no one would tell them worse than him. They were always out of order, which made him laugh before he could even tell the punchline. But that was his way, and it was perfect. And I'd do a lot to hear one of those ill-told jokes again. And although I miss him, and although it hurts, the most beautiful thing about him was the impact he left. I feel the closest to him when I'm doing something kind for others. As he wrote in one of his letters to me, giving to others is the gift. Anytime I miss him, anytime we miss him, sign up for volunteer work, donate to a good cause, reach out to loved ones, lend someone an ear and some time, be patient with that overwhelmed server, and at the very least, be kind to yourself, because that would be what would make him happiest. This is who my grandpa was genuinely. There was no taking off the mask. There was no revealing a faker, more sinister side. Of course, everyone has bad moments. But by the time I came in the picture, my grandpa had really fought most of his demons, and he was just kind of like this big bundle of love, honestly. I personally am a huge believer in signs, and I recently was at Goodwill. And already that day when I was driving to Goodwill, one of his favorite songs came on. So I already had him on my mind. And anytime I get a sign from him, I always kind of give a nod to him, hey, Grandpa, or hey, thanks for the sign, Grandpa, or, I miss you too, Gramps, or, good to see you. I always acknowledge it. It's kind of this conversation we're having. So that song came on, so he was already on my mind, and I was already hey, Grandpa, thanks for the hello, And then while I was shopping, I came across the shirt that I'm wearing now, and it literally brought me to tears right there in the Goodwill aisle. And I'm sure I looked insane, but if you are watching this shirt is from the Life's Good brand, which is my grandpa's brand. Not actually, not literally. He didn't create the brand, but this was a majority of what he bought, owned, gifted, and wore. Plus it's pink. So I immediately thought okay, perfect. This is for the podcast. And then I looked to see when Thanksgiving is. And of course, it's on a Thursday, which if you haven't noticed already, this podcast drops every single Thursday. So I personally don't believe in coincidences. So for all this come together, I felt like it was a sign that I absolutely had to honor him. And I think he'd be insanely proud of me and my pursuit of this creative passion, as he always believed that art was just as important as the maths and sciences. I remember every time he'd see me and every time he'd text me, he'd be like, hey, are you still making your art? Hey, are you still painting? Have you drawn anything recently? Have you wrote any poetry recently? Art was a huge part of his life and who he was. And I think more than being proud, he would actually feel special to have a episode dedicated to him, because he was just so humble in that way. So I feel really glad that all this came together and that you get to experience this with me. So now that you guys know him, I could share my letter to him. And so without further ado, let's get into it. The letter hasn't even started yet, and I'm just full of tears, but that's okay. This is a very human podcast, I love its wow factor, and I love the drama it could create and the pot it could stir. But at the end of the day, this podcast is for healing. This podcast is for the ups and downs, and it's for moments like this. Anyways, like I said, without further ado, dear Grandpa, it's not that there's so much I want to say to you. It's actually the fact that there's so much I want to hear from you. I talk to you all the time, and I feel like you're listening. I feel like you're listening because I see the signs, the shirt in Goodwill, the rain, the random oldies that come on a playlist that I know they're not in, the ladybugs, and so much more. But there's some things I can't see or can't hear that kill me. I miss your smell. Is that weird? I miss sitting in silence with you watching sports. I miss you sneaking me your favorite chocolate and you making me sneak you a gummy bear or two even when you weren't supposed to have them because of your very strict diet. I miss your stories and the way that you listened. I miss your text messages and the overuse of random emojis. I miss your letters and the way that you colored in the words. I miss your drawings and your poems, and I can't believe that I'll never have any new ones from you. I try to be okay with the fact that you won't be at my wedding, that we won't share a dance. I try to be okay with the fact that you weren't here to celebrate my graduation and you won't be in the future. I try to be okay with the fact that my family is different now that you aren't here. But truthfully, I'm not okay with any of that. And I guess I can just hope that time heals that. I wish I could hear what your conversations with my future spouse will sound like. I wish you could meet my first child. I wish you could have saw me in Atlanta. I wish I could see the look on your face when I finish grad school. I wish I could hear your encouragement when it gets hard. I just wish that we could have had more time, gone to the beach one last time, and honestly just had one last everything, you know? I guess I just miss you, and that's to be expected. But every day that passes, the grief grows smaller and my heart grows bigger. And some days I could even talk about you without tearing up, and that's progress. Though, of course, today is not one of those days. I love you so much, Grandpa. Thank you for everything that you gave me, and thank you for helping me become the person I am. I'll probably never stop missing my grandpa, but that doesn't have to be a sad thing. I think it'd be weird not to miss him, you know? I think I'll always probably think of him with this like mix of sadness and joy that I feel right now. And that's okay. Like I'd rather feel this and know I'm capable of feeling this than to feel nothing. My gratitude to have even ever known him will always overwhelm any of the pain and the anger that I feel. And I guess a weird part of me feels like if there's not any missing him, then it's like he was never here to even begin with. This letter brought me closure in a way that I didn't know that I needed. Closure almost feels like the wrong word because it's not necessarily that like a chapter has closed or I'm saying goodbye to anything, but it at least provided me the space to really deal with my feelings and address them all in a way that I haven't really been letting myself address, and letting me admit things I haven't been ready to admit. And that's created like this really light feeling that I haven't felt probably since he's passed away. And so that's really a groundbreaking moment for me. As always, thank you guys for listening. If this has inspired you to write a letter of your own, and I hope that it has, please visit the podcast Instagram at Dear X One Last Thing. No dots, no spaces, no underscores, just all one word. Once you get to the Instagram, check out the link in bio. You'll find the Google form to send in your anonymous letter, and it has been updated to accommodate some longer letters for those that have more to say, which is always appreciated. We absolutely love and need yappers for this show specifically. Please support this podcast with a like, share, comment, or follow, as it does encourage me to keep going, and I do keep all of your kind words with me throughout the day. I'm really not being dramatic. There was like a random person that commented on my TikTok. It wasn't even like one of the podcast clips, but it was just such a kind message. Like she was thanking me for starting the podcast, and she was so thankful that the podcast had popped up, and it had like really, she explained how it had really been helping her with her breakup. And I probably read that comment every single day. So know that your kind words do really make an impact, and they're more powerful than you realize. Thank you to the Life's Good brand for inspiring me to make this episode in some way. And lastly, thank you to Kevin MacLeod for the intro music, In Your Arms. And with that, that concludes our episode. Take care of yourself, love bugs, truly. And until next time, love me a rose.